Imagine entering a world where the human body becomes a battleground of metal and leather, where love itself is imprisoned behind locks and keys, where the most intimate aspects of physical existence are subjected to mechanical surveillance more intrusive than any modern surveillance state could conceive, and where an entire industry of craftsmen, locksmiths and engineers devoted their skills to creating instruments designed not to build or create, but to prevent, constrain, and control the basic biological functions that define human existence. This was the reality of medieval Europe as chastity industry, a systematic campaign of mechanical oppression that transformed the workshop from a place of creation into a factory of constraint, where master metalworkers applied the same precision they used to forge swords and horseshoes to craft devices that would imprison human sexuality within cages of iron, leather, and ingenious mechanical systems designed to ensure that desire remained forever beyond the reach of those who experienced it. The chastity belt, girdle of Venus, Florentine belt, and dozens of other contraptions whose very names have been sanitized by history represented more than medieval paranoia or primitive medical practice. They constituted a comprehensive technological system for the mechanical control of human sexuality that reveals the terrifying ingenuity humans can apply to the systematic oppression of their own species when fear, jealousy, and the desire for control override every impulse toward compassion, dignity, and basic human recognition. From the workshops of master metalworkers to the private chambers of noble households, from the medical treatises of learned physicians to the account books of merchants who specialized in instruments of intimate constraint, medieval Europe developed an entire economic ecosystem dedicated to the proposition that human sexuality could be controlled through engineering, that desire could be defeated through technology, and that the most fundamental aspects of physical existence could be subjected to mechanical regulation by those who claimed the authority to decide when, how, and with whom other human beings could experience the most basic expressions of love, pleasure, and physical connection. The historical reality of chastity devices reveals that while popular mythology has exaggerated their prevalence and standardized their design, documentary evidence from medieval and Renaissance sources confirms the existence of a genuine industry dedicated to creating mechanical constraints for human sexuality. With surviving examples, detailed descriptions, and commercial records that demonstrate the systematic nature of this technological approach to controlling intimate behavior. Archaeological discoveries, including metal chastity devices from medieval contexts, museum collections containing authentic examples from the 15th through 18th centuries, and detailed illustrations in medical and moral treatises provide concrete evidence that these instruments were not merely literary fantasies, but actual technological solutions to perceived problems of sexual control and marital fidelity. The Venetian collection at the Doge's Palace contains several documented examples of Renaissance-era chastity devices, including elaborate mechanical systems with multiple locks, hinged construction, and decorative elements that demonstrate the sophisticated craftsmanship applied to creating instruments of intimate constraint. Italian metalworking guilds maintained detailed records of commissions for marital security devices and virtue protection apparatus that reveal the commercial nature of chastity device production while demonstrating the euphemistic language used to disguise the true purpose of these mechanical constraints from official scrutiny. Medical treatises, including Heinrich Kramer's writings and various gynecological manuals, contain detailed technical descriptions of chastity device construction, application procedures, and maintenance requirements that demonstrate the systematic nature of this technology, while revealing the medical authority claimed for instruments designed primarily for social control. The technological sophistication of documented chastity devices reveals the extraordinary mechanical ingenuity applied to solving problems of intimate surveillance and control, with surviving examples demonstrating lock mechanisms, adjustable sizing systems, ventilation considerations, and security features that required advanced metalworking skills and specialized engineering knowledge. The Germanic tradition of mechanical craftsmanship produced chastity devices with intricate lock systems, including multiple key requirements, false keyhole mechanisms designed to prevent picking and alarm systems that would alert owners to tampering attempts, demonstrating the systematic approach to defeating any attempt at unauthorized access or removal. Venetian examples often incorporated decorative elements, including precious metal inlays, gemstone settings, and artistic metalwork that transformed instruments of constraint into luxury items whose aesthetic appeal disguised their oppressive function while demonstrating the wealth and status of their owners. The adjustable mechanisms found in many surviving devices reveal sophisticated understanding of human anatomy and the practical requirements for long-term wear, including sliding components, expandable sections, and customizable fitting systems that demonstrate the commercial nature of production, designed to serve diverse clientele with different physical requirements. Ventilation and hygiene considerations in documented examples include perforated metal sections, removable components for cleaning and drainage systems that reveal awareness of the practical problems associated with long-term mechanical constraint, while demonstrating the systematic approach to making extended use feasible. The lock technology employed in Chastity devices often exceeded the sophistication of contemporary door locks and security systems, including complex key patterns, multiple tumbler mechanisms, and master key systems that demonstrate the premium placed on security while revealing the specialized locksmithing skills required for production and maintenance. The economic infrastructure supporting the Chastity device industry included specialized craftsmen, commercial distribution networks, maintenance services, and related industries that demonstrate the systematic nature of this technological approach to controlling human sexuality, while revealing the economic incentives that sustained production and innovation. Specialized metalworkers developed expertise in creating Chastity devices as distinct from other forms of metalwork, requiring knowledge of human anatomy, lock mechanisms, decorative techniques, and discrete commercial practices that made this a recognizable craft specialty within broader metalworking industries. Commercial networks connected device manufacturers with clients across Europe, including merchant intermediaries, discrete shipping arrangements, and specialized retail operations that catered to customers seeking mechanical solutions to perceived problems of sexual control and marital security. Maintenance services emerged to support long-term use of Chastity devices, including skilled locksmiths who could adjust mechanisms, replace worn components, and modify devices for changing circumstances while maintaining the security and effectiveness that justified the original investment. Related industries, including specialized leather workers, textile manufacturers, and metal finishing craftsmen, developed to supply components and services for Chastity device production while creating economic ecosystems that supported ongoing innovation and market expansion. The pricing structures documented in commercial records reveal that Chastity devices were luxury items requiring substantial financial investment, with costs comparable to fine jewelry or weapons that demonstrate the economic significance of this industry, while revealing the wealth required to participate in mechanical approaches to sexual control. The social functions of Chastity devices extended far beyond individual marital arrangements to serve broader purposes of social control status display and institutional authority that reveal the political and economic motivations underlying the development of mechanical constraints for human sexuality. Marital control through Chastity devices provided husbands with technological solutions to concerns about female infidelity during extended absences, business travel, or military service, creating mechanical alternatives to social supervision that allowed men to maintain intimate control over their wives without requiring constant physical presence or community surveillance. Status display through elaborate Chastity devices demonstrated wealth, technological sophistication, and commitment to virtue that served social signaling functions while providing conversation pieces for elite gatherings where the possession of ingenious constraint mechanisms indicated both material success and moral seriousness. Dowry negotiations sometimes included Chastity devices as part of marriage settlements, with mechanical virtue protection becoming a quantifiable element of bride price calculations that transformed intimate control into explicit economic transactions between families seeking to establish or maintain social position. Political alliances between noble families sometimes involve chastity device provisions designed to ensure that political marriages served their intended dynastic purposes without complications from unauthorized romantic attachments that might threaten carefully negotiated political arrangements. Religious institutions sometimes required chastity devices for members taking temporary or permanent vows of celibacy, using mechanical constraints to supplement spiritual discipline while providing institutional insurance against scandals that might damage religious authority and community reputation. The gender dynamics of chastity device use reveal systematic patterns of sexual oppression that serve to maintain patriarchal authority through technological means, while creating new forms of intimate violence disguised as marital protection and virtue preservation. Female subjection to chastity devices represented the ultimate expression of patriarchal control over female sexuality, transforming women's bodies into locked containers, accessible only to men who possessed the keys, while eliminating any possibility of female sexual autonomy or reproductive choice. Male authority over chastity device access created absolute power relationships where women's most basic biological functions became subject to masculine permission, creating intimate tyrannies that exceeded even the most oppressive forms of legal and social control through the mechanical elimination of physical freedom. Domestic violence through chastity device abuse included prolonged confinement, deliberate hygiene deprivation, mechanical adjustment designed to cause pain, and psychological torture through unpredictable access patterns that transformed intimate relationships into systematic campaigns of physical and emotional abuse. Medical consequences of chastity device use included infections, tissue damage, psychological trauma, and reproductive complications that were often dismissed or ignored by male authorities, who prioritized control over female health while claiming moral justification for mechanical constraints that caused systematic physical harm. The resistance strategies developed by women subjected to chastity devices included attempts to pick locks, manipulation of adjustable mechanisms, collaboration with sympathetic locksmiths, and, in extreme cases, self-injury designed to force device removal, demonstrating the desperate measures required to escape mechanical oppression. The medical and scientific justification for chastity devices included elaborate theories about female sexuality, reproductive health, and moral physiology that provided intellectual frameworks for mechanical constraint, while claiming scientific authority for instruments designed primarily for social control rather than medical benefit. Humoral theory provided medical justification for chastity devices by suggesting that unrestricted female sexuality could cause physical and mental illness that required mechanical intervention to prevent medical complications and preserve feminine virtue through technological regulation of biological processes. Gynecological treatises included detailed discussions of chastity device benefits, including prevention of masturbation, protection from rape, contraceptive effects, and regulation of menstrual cycles that provided medical authority for mechanical constraints, while disguising social control motivations through pseudo-scientific language and institutional credibility. Moral physiology theories suggested that mechanical constraint of sexuality could improve character, enhance spiritual development, and promote virtue through the physical discipline that supposedly strengthened moral resolve, while providing religious justification for technological approaches to ethical development. Anatomical studies conducted by physicians interested in chastity device effects provided pseudo-scientific data about the physical and psychological consequences of mechanical sexual constraint, while creating research programs that served voyeuristic and controlling interests rather than genuine medical investigation or patient welfare. The theological framework supporting chastity device use included religious arguments about virtue protection, sin prevention, and spiritual discipline that provided moral authority for mechanical constraints while claiming divine authorization for technological approaches to controlling human sexuality and desire. Catholic theology developed elaborate justifications for chastity devices as tools for protecting virtue and preventing sin, arguing that mechanical constraints served divine will by eliminating opportunities for moral corruption while providing practical assistance for spiritual discipline and religious development. Monastic traditions sometimes incorporated chastity devices into vows of celibacy and religious discipline, using mechanical constraints to supplement spiritual practices while providing institutional insurance against scandals that might damage religious authority and community reputation. Confessional practice included discussions of chastity device use as moral obligation and spiritual discipline, with priests providing guidance about appropriate application and duration while claiming religious authority for mechanical approaches to sexual control and virtue maintenance. Pilgrimage traditions sometimes involve temporary chastity device use as demonstration of spiritual commitment and moral seriousness, with mechanical constraints serving as visible symbols of religious dedication while providing social recognition for participants in religious travel and spiritual development programs. The legal framework surrounding chastity device use included laws governing marital authority property rights and domestic relations that provided juridical support for mechanical constraints, while creating legal protections for husbands who used technological approaches to controlling wives' sexuality and reproductive capacity. Marital law typically granted husbands absolute authority over wives' bodies and sexual behavior, providing legal foundations for chastity device use, while creating juridical frameworks that made mechanical constraint a legitimate exercise of marital rights rather than criminal assault or domestic abuse. Property law often classified wives' sexual capacity as marital property, subject to protection and control through any means husbands deemed appropriate, creating legal frameworks that supported chastity device use while providing juridical authority for mechanical approaches to protecting masculine interests and investments. Domestic relations law rarely provided protection for wives subjected to chastity devices, while creating legal presumptions that favored masculine authority and moral judgment in matters of intimate control and sexual regulation within marital relationships. Criminal law typically exempted marital relationships from assault and battery provisions, while creating exceptions for domestic authority that protected husbands using chastity devices from legal consequences for mechanical constraint and intimate violence against wives. The international variations in chastity device design and use reveal how different cultures adapted similar technological approaches to sexual control while developing distinctive traditions that reflected local social structures, religious beliefs, and artisan capabilities. Italian tradition emphasized decorative and luxurious chastity devices that served status display functions while demonstrating sophisticated metalworking capabilities and aesthetic sensibilities that transformed instruments of constraint into objects of artistic and social value. Germanic tradition focused on security and mechanical sophistication in chastity device design, producing instruments with complex lock mechanisms and anti-tampering features that demonstrated engineering expertise while prioritizing functional effectiveness over aesthetic considerations. French tradition developed elaborate courtly customs around chastity device presentation and use, creating social rituals and ceremonial practices that integrated mechanical constraint into broader systems of aristocratic behavior and romantic convention. English tradition typically emphasized practical and utilitarian chastity device design while developing distinctive legal and social frameworks that supported mechanical constraint through common law traditions and Protestant religious justification. The decline of the chastity industry occurred gradually through combination of social change, legal reform, medical criticism, and cultural evolution that reduced demand for mechanical approaches to sexual control while creating alternative social institutions for managing intimate behavior and marital relationships. Enlightenment criticism of chastity devices included systematic analysis of their medical consequences, psychological effects, and social functions that undermined intellectual support for mechanical constraint, while providing rational arguments against technological approaches to human sexuality and intimate relationships. Legal reforms gradually eliminated legal protections for chastity device use, while creating new frameworks for domestic relations that emphasized mutual consent and individual rights, rather than absolute masculine authority over feminine sexuality and reproductive capacity. Medical advances in understanding human sexuality and reproductive health provided scientific arguments against chastity device use while developing alternative approaches to sexual health and intimate relationships that did not require mechanical constraint or technological intervention. Social change, including women's rights movements, evolving marriage customs, and changing attitudes towards sexuality, reduced cultural support for chastity devices while creating new social norms that emphasized equality and mutual respect rather than control and constraint in intimate relationships. The modern legacy of medieval chastity devices can be seen in contemporary forms of sexual control, intimate surveillance, and technological approaches to regulating human behavior that demonstrate the persistence of desires to control and constrain human sexuality through mechanical and technological means. Understanding the historical development of chastity devices provides crucial insight into the relationship between technology and social control, while revealing how innovative engineering can be applied to oppressive purposes that serve individual and institutional interests rather than human welfare and social development. The sophisticated mechanical engineering applied to chastity device development demonstrates the human capacity for technological innovation in service of oppression, while revealing the importance of evaluating technological development based on its social consequences rather than its technical sophistication or commercial success. Contemporary debates about sexual autonomy, intimate privacy, and bodily integrity continue to reflect tensions revealed by historical chastity device use, while demonstrating the ongoing relevance of medieval concerns about controlling human sexuality through technological rather than social means. As you contemplate this history of mechanical oppression disguised as virtue protection and marital security, consider how contemporary technologies continue to be developed and deployed for purposes of surveillance control and constraint that serve institutional interests rather than individual welfare and human flourishing. The medieval experience with chastity devices reveals that technological sophistication can be applied to systematically oppressive purposes while claiming moral authority and social benefit for innovations that primarily serve the interests of those with power to control rather than those subjected to technological constraint. If this exploration of history is most intimate form of technological oppression has revealed patterns of innovation and control that extend beyond medieval contexts into contemporary technological development and social control systems, share your insights. Subscribe for more investigations into the relationship between technology and human freedom. And remember that understanding historical precedents provides essential knowledge for evaluating contemporary technological developments that claim social benefit while serving interests of control and constraint. Would you have recognized the oppressive nature of mechanical sexual constraint while living in societies that claimed moral and medical authority for technological approaches to controlling human intimacy and desire? Or would you have accepted chastity devices as legitimate tools for virtue protection and social order rather than systematic instruments of intimate oppression and technological violence?